I get asked a lot about why I wrote Plan B, and there really are a variety of reasons why I wrote this book. But the biggest one for me was that I wanted to help people begin to understand that there is this undeniable relationship between crisis and transformation. And I think that the more that we can begin to understand that those two things are connected, the more that we can begin to grow and become the men and the women that God has created us to be. The reality is that so much of life is full of things that at the moment, they just don't make sense. Different events and circumstances that leave us searching for significance and understanding to why God would allow these things. As a pastor, I run into these kind of situations all the time, walking with people who find themselves in the midst of just unexplainable hurt and unexplainable situations that seem to just kind of like fall apart right in front of their eyes. I think about a couple different individuals and families from the church that I pastor. Recently, we had two families, Todd and Angie and Mike and Holly, who both went through just the undescribable loss of children in the birthing process. Both of them had babies that just literally lived hours before they passed away. And it's hard for any of us, to imagine going through that kind of pain. And our church walked with them and ministered to them during that time as they started to just try to put the pieces back together in their lives. About a year and a half later, an amazing thing happened and both couples got pregnant again. And as a pastor, I was so happy for them, just so excited that they had finally, begin to kind of move on to this next chapter. I knew that having another child wouldn't necessarily erase the pain that they had experienced from losing a child, but I felt like it would help them kind of move to that next chapter in their life. Their due dates were not the same, but in an amazing turn of events, I get a call one night and both couples are in the hospital in labor. Well, it wasn't a short labor. It went on and on and on, so I finally went to bed. I woke up the next morning so excited again for these couples and just for what I felt like God was doing in their life. And the first couple I talked to was Todd and Angie, and they had another little girl. They were so excited. Everything seemed to be normal and healthy. In another hospital, 1 block away, about an hour apart, Mike and Holly also had another child. But their child only lived an hour and a half. For a completely different set of medical reasons, once again, they had lost a child in the birthing process. So I go to visit Todd and Angie in their hospital room. We have a great time. We celebrate. We're just so excited about what God has done in their lives. And then I get in a car and I drive 1 block to go to visit Mike and Holly. And I know walking into this room, I'm already crying because I know what I'm about to experience. I know the pain. And so I walk into their hospital room, and there's Holly in the bed. There's Mike sitting in a rocking chair next to her, and he's just sitting there, and he's holding this lifeless baby, and he's just rocking back and forth and back and forth. And I walk over and I sit down next to him, and I just kind of put my hand on his shoulder. And he looks me right in the eyes, and with tears coming down his cheeks, he says, "Pete, why would God take away another one of my children?" I've been criticized in certain circles for writing this book, which is about God and crisis and pain. A book that clearly states that I just don't think there's always answers to all of life's questions and complexities. But I dare any one of those critics to stand there in that room with that young couple and even try to answer all their questions as they sit there holding this lifeless child. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this as a pastor, but I'm going to anyway. Isn't it amazing how in a moment like that, you so desperately want God near, yet at the same time, you just feel like you want to push him away? The reality for Christians is often we have more questions than we do answers. Reality is sometimes we lack the faith to give us a sustained hope. Reality is, even though we know that God is with us, sometimes we feel completely alone. Reality is, even though we believe, we also doubt. There's a big difference between trust and understanding. They say trust is what we need when we don't have understanding. So these days, I pray for a lot of trust. I pray for a big, huge helping of trust. Eventually we all have these dreams and wishes and goals that just don't happen. And sometimes it's clearly our fault. We made a bad decision or we took the wrong path. And then other times it seems like our plan Bs or our unmet expectations or somebody else's poor decisions. But sometimes, honestly, it's just a combination of all of those things. But maybe today you find yourself and you had this dream that you were gonna finish your life with the person that you married, but you're just shocked by the fact that right now you feel like your marriage is ending. Some of you have had the dream of having children and you want kids more than anything in this world. But for whatever reason, you can't get pregnant. Some of you had a career dream. You thought that you were gonna go into ministry, but no doors are opening up. Or you thought that you were gonna get that corner office, but you're stuck in the cubicle. Some of you are single and you so desperately want to be married. You want to have someone that you can share your life with, but that dream seems like it's getting further and further away. And then to make matters worse, don't you sometimes feel like everyone else is achieving their dreams? We look around and it looks like, everyone else's dream is coming true. Everyone else is getting married. Everyone else is having kids. Everyone else is successful. Everyone else is happy in their marriage. But no matter what has happened or how you feel, please know you're not alone. Because here's what I'm learning. Every single day, I'm reminded that everyone needs healing. We all have this picture of the way our life should be. And for some of us, the picture of the way our life should be and the picture of reality just don't quite match up. And so it's this constant reminder to us that life is not turning out the way we had hoped. Everybody has experienced loss and doubt, and part of our time together is to help you identify yours, to help you create a safe environment where you can name those shattered dreams. Because until you can name it and face it, you will always just have this emptiness that haunts you. Your season of shattered dreams and unmet expectations has led some of you to even struggle with, does God exist? And while I usually don't wrestle with that one so much, the question that resurfaces for me again and again and again has more to do with all the unexplainable pain and just hurt in this world. The greater struggle for me is that God does exist, and yet so does a lot of pain and suffering. The greater struggle for me is being able to reconcile these two seemingly unmixable components, a God who's all loving and a world that's just full of pain and shattered dreams. So what do you do with a shattered dream? What do you do with an unmet expectation? Your broken dreams can actually be a source of healing and eventual success, but you'll miss this life that God has for you if you don't understand this connection between crisis and transformation. You'll never experience the help that God can provide if you don't share these shattered dreams with the people who care about you the most. So my prayer is that over these next several weeks, as you meet with your group, that maybe we'll come to just a better understanding together of where we go from here. Together, we'll look at some scriptures, which I believe will give us a better understanding of just where we go and what we should do in the midst of our plan Bs.